Malik's hands trembled as the principal snatched his award off the podium. Not because he cheated, but because someone like him couldn't have won. Cameras kept rolling. His classmates stayed silent. One whispered. They switched the results, and just as Malik turned to leave, he saw his name missing from the school records. What they did next will leave you speechless. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Malik adjusted the straps of his backpack and stepped through the glass-paneled doors of Cresswell Academy's East Wing. This was no ordinary school. Everything about it screamed wealth and exclusivity. The hallway floors were a polished marble that reflected his sneakers like a mirror. Every locker was built into sleek oak cabinetry. Around him, white students moved with an air of entitlement, laughing confidently, talking loudly, their designer clothes flashing school logos custom embroidered with gold thread. Malik felt the weight of every gaze. He wasn't wearing designer labels. His jeans were ironed but worn. His hoodie was clean, but plain. It wasn't just his clothes, it was everything. His skin, his presence, his silence. He didn't belong here, at least not according to the silent rules being spoken around him. Room 2B loomed at the end of the hall. Advanced calculus and abstract logic. It was the crown jewel of Cresswell's academic track. Only 15 students had made it in. And Malik, a scholarship student from Southfield, was one of them. His placement wasn't luck. He had aced every placement test, outperforming most juniors and even a few seniors. But none of that mattered in this building. Here, perception outweighed performance. He stepped into the room, 15 desks arranged in a half circle. A massive chalkboard framed with dark walnut. Rows of thick textbooks stacked on a side table like ancient tomes. At the front sat Mrs. Hartford, tall, angular, and cold-eyed, tapping away at her iPad. She didn't look up. Malik picked the last seat on the far left. No one looked at him. Until Preston did. Preston Worthington IV. Flawless jawline, tailored uniform, silver ring on his pinky finger, and a Rolex he didn't need. The son of the man who owned the very land the school sat on. Preston didn't just attend Cresswell. He was Cresswell. He leaned back, arms crossed, scanning Malik like he was a glitch in the program. "Did they let the janitor's kid in here by mistake?" Preston's voice sliced through the quiet murmur of morning conversation. The room stilled. One girl chuckled nervously, then silenced herself. Malik looked down. His ears burned. The sting wasn't just the words. It was the silence that followed. No one said a thing, not even Mrs. Hartford. Preston wasn't finished. Or maybe it's one of those diversity outreach things, you know? Like a field trip. Let the less fortunate play in the sandbox for a bit. Malik blinked slowly. His fists clenched under the desk. Mrs. Hartford finally looked up, but said nothing. Just resumed scrolling on her iPad, like she hadn't heard a thing. It was an unmistakable message. This isn't your space. You're on your own here. The second bell rang. Malik tried to focus as class began. Formulas. Variables. Graphs. But the weight in his chest wouldn't ease. Preston lounged in his chair, tossing glances toward Malik, now and then like a cat toying with prey. Mrs. Hartford began writing a series of complex equations on the board. Partial derivatives, modular functions, matrix inversions. Then she turned to the class. "Anyone want to take a stab at simplifying this?" she asked. Her voice clipped, neutral. No one moved. Even the top students hesitated. It was only the first week. Everyone was feeling out the difficulty level. But then, in one fluid motion, Preston stood. He walked slowly to the board, confidence in every step. He picked up the chalk with a grin and glanced toward Malik. "I'm gonna write one for our new guest." "Something simple," he said mockingly. Without waiting for permission, he erased part of Mrs. Hartford's equation and scribbled his own, a dense integration problem involving 3 layers of nested functions, far beyond standard high school curriculum. He stepped back dramatically, presenting the board like it was an exhibit. "There. Let's see if Southfield's finest can handle that." Gasps. A few scattered laughs. Someone whispered, "Damn." Malik stared at the board. The problem wasn't just hard. It was a trap. Preston had designed it to humiliate, not challenge. A no-win situation meant to expose Malik as inferior. Mrs. Hartford didn't stop it. Instead, she looked at Malik. Eyebrows raised. "Well?" she said flatly. "You wanted to be here." All eyes turned to him. Malik stood slowly. His legs felt stiff, like he was walking through wet cement. Each step toward the board echoed in his ears. He picked up the chalk. Sweat tickled the back of his neck. The numbers swam. He felt the heat of every stare drilling into his back. This wasn't math anymore. It was a trial. Preston smirked from the front row, arms folded, whispering something to a student beside him. They snickered. Malik's mind was blank. Then he heard something faint, his mother's voice from memory, soft but firm. You are not what they think you are. You are what you know, what you've earned, what you've bled for. His breathing steadied. He looked at the problem again, not with panic, but precision. This wasn't new. He'd seen this type of integration hidden inside college prep guides he used at home. He remembered working through it late at night, floor fan blowing, light flickering, while his little sister slept in the next room. He took a breath and began writing. His chalk moved slower than Preston's had, but each mark was deliberate, measured, one line, then the next. Variables cancelled, limits reduced, trig identities substituted. He wasn't just solving it, he was deconstructing it. The room grew still again. The whispering stopped. Mrs. Hartford stood upright, watching. Malik didn't notice. He was deep inside the numbers now, lost in the problem, fingers dusted with white chalk. He reached the final step and underlined the answer. Done. He stepped back, hands trembling. The room was frozen. A long silence followed. Then, out of nowhere, a single clap. Then two. Then four. A slow, rising applause broke the silence. A few students stared, jaws parted. Even the kids who had chuckled before now looked stunned. Malik had done the impossible, but Mrs. Hartford didn't clap. She stepped forward, eyes narrowing as she examined the board. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Her finger pointed to a line near the middle. You used a trigonometric identity here, she said. Not the one I would have preferred. That's technically acceptable. But I'll have to dock points. The room fell silent again. Malik blinked. His jaw tightened. He wanted to say something, but didn't. He simply returned to his seat, every breath tight in his lungs. Preston's smirk had vanished, but it wasn't over. As the bell rang and students gathered their things, Preston paused by the board. He picked up the chalk, looked Malik dead in the eyes, and began writing another problem. More complex, more twisted, a silent challenge. Then he smiled, that same smug aristocratic grin, and stepped aside. Malik stared at the new problem, realizing Preston wasn't done yet, and neither was this war. Malik stood frozen in front of the board, chalk in hand, eyes locked on the new equation Preston had scribbled just before the bell. It wasn't just more complex, it was hostile, designed like a trap, coiled and mocking, just like the boy who wrote it. The variables intertwined like barbed wire, and it wasn't part of the lesson plan. It was Preston's own creation, meant to be unsolvable by someone like Malik. The classroom was almost empty now. Most of the students had filtered out, but a few lingered, sensing something charged in the air. Elias, a quiet boy from the back row, hovered near the door, glancing between Malik and the board like he was watching a fuse burn down. Even Miss Hartford remained seated, eyes flitting up occasionally from her iPad with a thinly veiled curiosity she wouldn't admit to. Malik didn't move. His fingers tightened around the chalk, but his arm was stiff. In his ears the ticking of the wall clock thundered like a drumbeat. His breath was shallow, fast, too fast. A familiar panic crept in, the kind that whispered lies. You're not supposed to be here. You're the glitch, the exception, the mistake they'll correct. Behind him, Preston leaned against a desk, arms folded, his grin sharp as a knife. Any day now, he said under his breath, just loud enough for the few remaining students to hear. Unless you want me to walk you through it. A couple of them chuckled lightly, nervously. It wasn't a real laugh. It was permission, a signal that the pecking order was being enforced, and no one was about to challenge it. Malik blinked once, twice, still silent. His eyes flicked across the equation again. Triple integrals nested inside irrational limits. Multivariate functions, layered like a mathematical labyrinth. It felt like a riddle carved in a language he had barely begun to speak. He started to back away, but then, something shifted. A flicker. A memory, not of numbers, but of faces. His fourth-grade teacher, who asked him if someone else had helped him with his homework because his answers were too advanced. The middle school science fair judge, who told him, "You speak so well," as if that were the miracle. The counselor who suggested he aim for local colleges, even after scoring in the 98th percentile on every practice exam. His mind snapped back to the present. The chalk in his hand stopped shaking. The equation was hard, But it wasn't impossible, because Preston wasn't smarter. He was just louder. And protected. Malik's jaw set. He stepped forward and began to write. At first, just a few careful lines. Substituting variables. Rewriting the limits. Silence returned to the room. Even Preston's grin started to shrink. The lines were clean. Intentional. Then Malik picked up speed. It was like watching a dam break. His wrist moved fast now, slashing across the board with confidence. His mind pulled from everything. Old textbooks, online courses, YouTube lectures watched late at night with earbuds in, while his baby sister slept in the bunk below him. Each new line corrected what looked like chaos into order. He integrated across the y-axis, then nested again into a derivative, simplified the irrational limit, with an inverse transformation most high school students wouldn't recognize. His work wasn't just correct, it was elegant. Elias had stopped by the door, frozen in place. Even Mrs. Hartford looked up, visibly leaning forward. Malik's breath evened out. In his head everything else faded. Preston's smirk, the low whispers, the cold indifference of the school itself. All of it fell away. It was just him and the numbers now. And for the first time all day, he felt like he was on solid ground. Then came the last line. He underlined it with a hard press of chalk that snapped the stick in half. Done. No one spoke. The few students still in the room looked at the board, and then at Preston. His smile was gone. He stepped forward, as if needing to see the problem up close, but Malik didn't move aside. He stood there, shoulders squared, breathing slowly. You copy that from somewhere? Preston muttered. You must have memorized it. That's not. Mrs. Hartford rose from her desk. Her heels tapped against the floor like a gavel. As she approached, she scanned the board from top to bottom, no emotion on her face. Then she turned to Malik. You solved it. 3 words. Dry. Barely acknowledging what he'd done. But it wasn't just an answer. It was a victory. A loud, undeniable statement in a place that had only whispered doubt. Malik turned toward Preston. Their eyes met, and for a brief second, Preston's jaw tightened. Malik wasn't supposed to beat him. This was Cresswell. His domain. He was born into this. Malik wasn't supposed to win. And yet, he had. Mrs. Hartford walked back to her desk, giving no praise, no nod of approval. But everyone in the room felt it. The tension crackling under the surface. Something had shifted. As Malik stepped away from the board, he caught a glimpse of Elias looking at him. Not with pity, but with something else. Something closer to respect. But the moment didn't last. Because just as Malik gathered his things, thinking maybe the storm had passed, Preston muttered something under his breath, loud enough to be heard. Enjoy it while it lasts. Malik turned. But Preston wasn't looking at him. He was scribbling something into his notebook, casually, like the entire moment had meant nothing. Mrs. Hartford glanced over again, but said nothing. Malik left the room with his heart still pounding. Not from fear, but from something hotter. He'd proved himself, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like war. As Malik stepped into the hallway, a student slipped a crumpled piece of paper into his hand without a word, and vanished. He unfolded it, and his eyes widened. It read, "They don't want you to win. Watch your back." The sound of chalk snapping against the board still echoed faintly in the room. As Malik stepped back, his fingers white from the dust, his heart thundering behind his ribs, like it wanted out. For a moment, no one said anything, just the raw silence of disbelief. Then slowly, like ripples across a still lake, it began. A soft whoa from the front row, a stunned whisper from the back. Did he just, then? Applause. Scattered at first, hesitant, unsure. But it grew, louder, real. Hands clapped not because they were told to, but because what they'd witnessed couldn't be ignored. Even the top-tier students, the ones who typically rolled their eyes at anything that didn't involve extra credit, were nodding, leaning in, visibly impressed. Malik didn't smile. He didn't nod. He stood motionless as the praise washed over him, not basking in it, but surviving it. Because beneath the noise he was waiting for the only reaction that mattered. Mrs. Hartford. She remained at her desk, her reading glasses perched low on her nose, as she scanned his work with the calm scrutiny of someone reading a weather report. The applause didn't move her, not even a twitch. She waited until the last clap died, then stood and walked toward the board like she was attending a funeral, not witnessing brilliance. She examined the problem, top to bottom. No rush, no emotion. Then she turned to the class and said, "The substitution in step 3 was unconventional. While technically acceptable, it's not what I was looking for." Malik's stomach dropped. The room fell quiet again. Mrs. Hartford didn't elaborate. She turned back to her desk and scribbled something on her tablet. Malik's voice came out drier than he expected. Your docking points? She didn't look up. Correct. A wave of murmurs broke out behind him. A few students exchanged stunned looks. Even Preston's eyebrows twitched upward slightly. He hadn't expected this. Not like this. Mrs. Hartford's voice cut through the murmurs. Let's not forget, students, this is an advanced placement class. Precision matters. If we start lowering standards just because something looks impressive, we undermine the integrity of the program. Malik blinked, the words hitting harder than they should have. He felt stripped again, not just questioned, but accused of flashover substance. He wanted to respond, to push back, but his throat tightened. He returned to his seat without a word. Behind him, the classroom felt different now. Not just awkward, fractured. A girl named Mariah leaned toward her friend and whispered, not quietly enough, but he got it right. Her friend whispered back, doesn't matter, she's never gonna let him win.
Malik heard every word.
The rest of the class passed in a blur. Variables and functions swam on the board, but none of it stuck. Malik's mind was somewhere else, spinning between humiliation and disbelief. He could still see the look on her face, flat, dismissive, calculated, like she hadn't just watched a student dismantle a hostile equation under pressure, but rather someone who had gotten too close to something she didn't want touched. The bell rang. Students packed up quickly, their voices hushed. Preston left without a word, but not without a look. A strange one this time. Less smug, more annoyed. Malik didn't move. Mrs. Hartford returned to her desk, already sorting through digital grade entries. He approached her slowly. Excuse me, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Can I talk to you about the points? She glanced up briefly. Yes, you said I used an unconventional method, but it was still mathematically sound. You said yourself it was technically acceptable. She didn't miss a beat. It was acceptable, not preferred. But the assignment didn't specify a required method, Malik said, trying not to sound defensive. It was an open solution. Mrs. Hartford folded her hands. You're right. And you're obviously very capable. But capability doesn't replace discipline or humility. That word, humility, landed like a slap. Malik frowned. What do you mean by that? She tapped her pen against the desk once, then twice. You seem very eager to prove something, she said calmly. To be seen. That's admirable. To a point. But there's a difference between mastering a subject and making a performance out of it. Advanced math isn't about theatrics. Malik felt his mouth go dry. So solving a hard problem under pressure is theatrics now. It's about how you carry yourself, she replied. There's a reason we have structure, rules, expectations. When students start bypassing that, it sends the wrong message, especially students who. She paused, just slightly, and her eyes narrowed. Who what? Malik pressed. She didn't answer right away. Then, with chilling softness, she said, students who are new to this environment sometimes forget there's a rhythm they need to follow. You'll learn it, or you won't. Malik's heart pounded in his ears. There it was. Not directly said, but clearly meant. The underlying message wasn't about math, or precision, or structure. It was about place, about power, about reminding him he was a guest in a space never built for him. He stared at her, struggling to breathe through the knot in his chest. You didn't even want me in this class, did you? He asked, voice lower now. Mrs. Hartford gave a tight smile. I don't decide enrollment. That's above my pay grade, which wasn't a denial. It was a confirmation wrapped in indifference. Malik stepped back, his eyes burning, not from tears, but from the fury of clarity. This wasn't just about him versus Preston. This was systemic, quiet, coated in politeness and professionalism, but sharp as glass. He turned without another word and left the room, the weight in his chest heavier than when he entered. Outside, the hallway was empty. The folded note still sat in his pocket. He pulled it out again, reading the words over and over. They don't want you to win. Watch your back. His mind spun. Who had given it to him? Why? He didn't know who to trust anymore. He reached his locker, but before he could open it, a small voice behind him made him stop. Hey, Elias said quietly, glancing around. You got a minute? Malik nodded slowly. Elias looked nervous. Sweat on his forehead, voice trembling. You need to know something. About Preston. And about the math department. Malik narrowed his eyes. What about them? Elias leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. They've been doing this for years. You're not the first they tried to push out. Elias pulled out his phone and showed Malik a hidden folder labeled proof. The picture message sitting on Malik's screen burned into his thoughts long after he left the library. Every step through the dim hallway felt heavier than the last, as if the walls themselves were watching him. The fluorescent lights flickered above like tired eyes, half closed but still alert. He tucked the flash drive deep into his jacket pocket, gripping it so tightly that the plastic edges pressed into his palm. The school felt different now, less like an institution and more like a maze built to trap him. He didn't go straight home. He couldn't. The message, "We're watching," echoed like a taunt, a warning, and a promise all at once. He needed air, space, something to pull him out of the tightening web he'd stepped into without knowing. So he wandered the open campus courtyard, its emptiness stretched by the early evening shadows. The cold wind brushed against the back of his neck and made him shiver. Every passing breeze felt like someone whispering just behind him. But eventually, as the sun dipped and the heater lamps along the walkway flicked on, he had no choice but to leave. His mother would worry. She always worried. He zipped up his jacket, slung his backpack over one shoulder, and headed toward the bus stop. But as he passed the academic building, he heard something, a voice, sharp and distinct, leaking through the narrow crack of a door that hadn't fully latched. He froze. It was Mrs. Hartford. He almost kept walking, almost ignored it, almost convinced himself he didn't need to hear another word from her. But something in her tone, firm, irritated, almost venomous, pulled him back. He moved closer, slow and careful. "And that's exactly why students like him never last," she was saying. Malik's breath caught. She wasn't alone. Another voice responded. Male, deeper. "Probably Mr. Kessler, the physics instructor." "You're being dramatic," the man said. "He's bright. Maybe too bright for his own good. But still," Mrs. Hartford cut him off. "Bright isn't the issue. Discipline is. Structure. Respect. You give boys like him too much room, and they think they're the exception. They come in here wanting to prove something." Her words were like a slap. Malik leaned closer, his back pressed flat against the wall. The door was open only an inch, but the sound filtered through cleanly, as if the building itself wanted him to hear.
Mr. Kessler lowered his voice. "You're not saying anything you'd put in an email."
"That's because honesty isn't welcome in emails," she snapped. "But between us, you know exactly what I mean." There was a short pause. Malik's heartbeat thudded like a drum in his ears. Mrs. Hartford continued, quieter now, but somehow sharper. "We put him in honors because the board insisted, not because he earned it. Do you know how many donors called after the acceptance list went out? Parents who wanted their children in that class instead of him. And now he wants to act like he's redefining the curriculum." "Hartford," Kessler warned gently. "No. I'm tired of pretending. Every year it's the same story. The same attitude. You people always want to prove something. Always pushing. Always questioning authority. It's exhausting." Malik stiffened. "You people." He knew exactly what she meant. The phrase didn't need explanation. It carried its own history, sharp as glass. Kessler sighed. "You shouldn't say that. Not even privately." "Why not?" she shot back. "Do you honestly think he's here because of merit? Look at the files. Look closer." They padded his scores to justify the placement. "They're trying to diversify our academic records." "Optics, Kessler. It's all optics. That's not proven. Everything is proven, if you know where to look. His placement isn't the result of earned excellence. It's the result of pressure. Political, social, administrative. You give someone a free ticket, they'll think they can rewrite the rules." Malik's fingers curled into fists at his sides. He fought the instinct to burst through the door, to tell her she didn't know anything about him. About late nights studying at a kitchen table, with a flickering bulb. About solving problems he had no business understanding at his age. About working twice as hard to earn half the acknowledgement. Kessler's voice softened. "He's just a kid, Hartford." "No. He's a disruption. And if we don't correct him early, he'll become a problem we can't control." The words sank into him like weights tied to his ribs. A problem. That was how she saw him. Not as a student. Not as a thinker. Not as a young black boy trying to navigate an overwhelmingly white institution. To her, he was a threat. Something to suppress. Something that needed correction. A chair scraped across the tile floor inside the room, and Malik realized he had to leave now, before the door opened and they found him standing there. He backed away quietly, careful not to let his shoes squeak against the polished floors. He kept moving, until he reached the exit, heart pounding, vision tightening. The cold air outside hit him like a wave. He gulped it down, trying to steady himself. He didn't know whether he was shaking from rage or disbelief, maybe both. The bus ride home was a blur. Streetlights smeared across the windows like streaks of melted gold. Every turn of the wheels felt like some distant, muffled rhythm. He sat alone, hoodie pulled over his head, hands still trembling. His mother was waiting when he got home. She always waited, but tonight her face softened with worry the moment she saw him. "You look exhausted," she murmured. "Long day?" Malik nodded, forcing a thin smile. "Just school." She didn't push. She never did. She had learned long ago that some things needed time before they could be spoken aloud. He tried to head straight to his room, but she stopped him gently. "Malik, wait. Something was in your bag. I wanted to ask you about it." His stomach dropped. She held up a folded paper different from the spreadsheet she'd found before. This one was smaller, handwritten, edges creased as if someone had shoved it in quickly. "I didn't open it," she said softly. "But it fell out, and I thought maybe it was important." Malik took it from her, pulse quickening again. He unfolded it slowly. Inside was a message written in rushed handwriting, darker and more frantic than the letter he'd received earlier. "They know you were in the library. Stop digging. Someone is about to make a move. Protect yourself." His mother watched his face change. "Malik, what is that?" He swallowed hard, because just below the warning message, a second line had been added, one that turned his blood cold. "Ask your mother what she signed during your application." He looked up sharply, breath hitching. His mother's expression was already shifting. Confusion first, then something darker, something like fear. "Malik," she whispered. I didn't think they'd ever bring that up." Malik stared at her, heart pounding, as she stepped back with trembling hands, about to reveal something that could rewrite everything he believed about getting into Cresswell Academy. The house was silent, except for the gentle clink of Malik's fork against his plate. He hadn't touched his food much, pushing the rice and vegetables around, while his mother sat across from him, eyes sharp and patient. Her silence wasn't absence, it was steady. She knew him well enough to recognize when he was carrying something heavy, something he didn't have words for yet. "You're quiet," she said finally, her voice warm but edged with concern. "Did something happen at school today?" Malik didn't look up. "No," he lied. She didn't press. She just nodded slowly, reaching for her glass of water. But Malik could feel it, the weight of everything that had happened, sitting just under his skin. The board, the chalk, Mrs. Hartford's icy dismissal, Elias and his whispered warnings, and that folder labeled proof. Later that night, Malik sat on his bed, backpack open at his feet. The glow of the hallway light spilled in from under his door as he pulled out his notebooks and laptop. His eyes were raw from the day, his thoughts frayed at every edge. He didn't know who to trust. Every smile now felt suspicious. Every glance, calculated. He wanted to sleep, to shut it all off, but something gnawed at him, an itch he couldn't reach. That's when he noticed it, a thin envelope tucked between the pages of his calculus notebook. It hadn't been there before. He froze, his breath catching in his throat, as he carefully slid it out. No name, no stamp, just a folded white envelope sealed with a piece of clear tape. He looked around his empty room instinctively, even though he was alone, then slowly opened it. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, handwritten, no signature. But what it said made his chest tighten. "You were not supposed to be in that class. There are emails. Preston's father made a call. They tried to block your acceptance last minute, but someone pushed you through anyway. Be careful. Some teachers are part of it. Look at the math department hiring dates and board donations. Start there." Malik's eyes scanned the note again, and again. Every word hit like a cold knife. He wasn't imagining it. There was something deeper happening. This wasn't just about a kid with a big mouth, or a teacher with a bias. This was institutional, controlled, and someone knew about it. But who? He flipped the letter over. Nothing on the back. No handwriting he could recognize. It wasn't Elias's style. This was neat, tight cursive, too clean to match his slouched speech, or hurried movements. He stared at the paper for a long moment, heart racing. Then came a knock on his door. "Malik?" His mom's voice. He shoved the letter under his laptop just in time. "Yeah?" She opened the door gently, carrying a small basket of clean laundry. "I found this in your bag." She held out a document folded, slightly crumpled. It wasn't the letter. It was a printed spreadsheet. Malik took it slowly, unfolding it. At first it looked like nothing. Columns of names, years and donations. But then it clicked. Cresswell Academy Math Department, faculty hiring timeline and donor records. On one side, a list of math teachers with hire dates. On the other, a list of parent donors with corresponding years and amounts. His eyes darted across the rows. Preston's father, Charles Worthington IV. $3.2 million. Year of Preston's freshman enrollment. That same year, Mrs. Hartford had been promoted to head of curriculum, despite only being with the school for 2 years. 2 other donations stood out. One in the year a black student named Jalen Thomas was forced to transfer out after academic probation, even though he was a national merit semifinalist. Malik remembered reading a small blurb about it last year. But the school had buried it fast. It wasn't just prejudice. It was strategy. Buy influence. Move pieces. Keep power consolidated. Where did you find this? Malik asked, voice tight. His mother shrugged lightly. It was folded between your notebooks. I thought it was homework. It wasn't. It was a breadcrumb. He didn't sleep that night. He stared at the spreadsheet. The letter. The questions bouncing around in his head like loose wires. Who gave him this? Why? What did they want him to do with it? By the next morning, Malik's paranoia had grown sharper. Every glance in the hallway felt loaded. Every conversation sounded coded. Elias nodded at him in passing, but they didn't speak. Then during second period, Malik felt the vibration in his pocket. A text from an unknown number. Library. 6 p.m. Come alone. Use the back stairs. Do not tell Elias. Malik's pulse jumped. It didn't say who it was. No name. No signature. He looked around. Had someone just seen him read it? The rest of the day dragged painfully. Each class felt like a detour from the burning mystery that now owned his thoughts. Who was watching him? Who had his back? And why warn him at all? He considered showing the message to someone. But who could he trust? The staff? Absolutely not. Elias? The message specifically said not to tell him. That was strange. Suspicious. But something told Malik that whatever he was walking into, he had to see it for himself. When the final bell rang, Malik didn't go home. He waited, sat through after-school activity rush, pretended to review notes in the courtyard, watched students disappear one by one, then waited another 20 minutes before heading to the back stairwell that led to the old side of the library, the part no one used anymore. The door was slightly ajar. He slipped inside, the quiet swallowing him. The air smelled of dust and old books. Faint fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. He walked past rows of neglected shelves until he reached the far corner, where the study cubicles sat untouched. And there, sitting at the last desk, was someone he didn't expect. It wasn't Elias. It wasn't a student at all. It was Ms. Reeves, the school's diversity coordinator. She looked up, her eyes serious but not unkind. I was wondering if you'd come, she said. Malik's throat tightened. You sent the message? She nodded. And the letter. But I couldn't send it directly. Too risky. He stepped forward, confused, cautious. Why are you involved? She sighed, folding her hands. Because this school has secrets. And I've seen too many black students chewed up by them. I've tried the official routes. Meetings. Memos. They go nowhere. So now, I'm trying something else. Malik swallowed hard, adrenaline and confusion crashing together. You think I'm next? I know you are, she said. And you're already in the middle of it. She reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. This has emails, meeting notes, backdated evaluations, things I was never supposed to see. Preston's father used his donation to override faculty decisions. Hartford pushed for your removal weeks before classes began. There was a vote. It failed, barely. Malik felt the floor shift beneath him. How do you even have this?
Ms. Reeves looked away.
I wasn't always a coordinator. I used to be assistant director of records. An unexpected twist. One that made the pieces fall into place. She pushed the flash drive across the table. I'm trusting you. But be smart. If this gets out the wrong way, it'll vanish. And so will you. Malik stared at it. His hands didn't move. Everything he'd ever worked for was suddenly in front of him. Tangled in conspiracy, whispers and hidden files. But the real question wasn't just what he would do with it. It was who else already knew he had it. Malik's phone buzzed again, this time with a photo message. It was a picture of him entering the library, taken from inside the school's security system. Under it, we're watching. The wind outside whistled against the school's brick walls as Malik and Elias stood behind the gym, shadows stretching long across the concrete. Elias shifted his weight from one foot to the other, glancing around like someone about to confess to a crime. Malik stood silent, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, not with suspicion but with the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Elias pulled his phone from his pocket, unlocking it with a trembling thumb. You have to promise me you won't say I showed you this. If this gets traced back to me, I'm done. My parents would pull me out of school, and I'd be finished. But you need to know the truth. Malik gave him a single nod, sharp and certain. Show me. Elias opened a folder titled Proof. Inside were dozens of screenshots, PDFs, and even voice memos. He tapped on one labeled Worthington Backdoor.pdf and held it out. Malik scanned the screen, confusion quickly giving way to something colder, something that clenched his jaw as the pieces began to snap together. The email was from Cresswell's admissions office to the Dean of Students. Subject line, Donor Placement Adjustment Request. The message was short but damning. In light of Charles Worthington IV's recent $3 million contribution to the Building Expansion Fund, we are proceeding with Preston Worthington's AP Math placement. Despite current metrics falling short of academic eligibility, faculty is advised to provide developmental support as needed. Do not flag this internally. Malik read it twice. Then again, the words didn't change, but his world did. Everything shifted like the floor beneath him had cracked open and revealed the machinery underneath. All this time, every smug smile from Preston, every cruel joke, every time he'd been praised in class, it wasn't earned. It was paid for. There's more, Elias said, voice hushed. He flipped to a document titled Placement Rankings, Confidential. A table appeared. Malik's name sat at the top. His exam score circled in red, 97. Preston's was listed further down. Scores. Malik blinked, stunned. They gave him my spot. Elias looked down. Technically, your spot was secure, but he shouldn't have even been considered. They moved someone else out of the program quietly to make room for him. Jalen Thomas. Malik's eyes flared. He knew that name. Jalen had been a sophomore last year, a sharp, quiet black student who suddenly transferred out mid-semester. No warning, no explanation. Rumor had it he'd plagiarized a senior thesis outline and left before a formal hearing. Malik had never questioned the rumor until now. They set Jalen up too, Malik whispered. Just like they're doing to me. Elias nodded. It's a pattern. They make it look like we can win, like we're being welcomed into these spaces. But the second we start to outshine the ones they actually protect, they pull the rug out. Malik's chest rose and fell with slow, heavy breaths. His mind was racing, but something clearer than anger was starting to settle in him. A resolve he didn't know he had. How long have you known? He asked. I found the folder by accident, 2 weeks ago, Elias said. I work in the IT office after school. One of the admins left their drive plugged in. I saw the email subjects and took screenshots. At first I thought it was just favoritism bad, but normal rich kid stuff. But then they came for you. That's when I realized, this is bigger. It's targeted. Malik closed his eyes for a moment. The weight of it all felt unbearable. Until it wasn't. Until it became fuel. I'm not staying quiet, he said. They want me gone, but I'm not backing down. Elias hesitated. If you go public, they'll come at you harder. Preston's dad? He's already got the school in his pocket. Then I'll burn the whole pocket, Malik said, his voice low but steady. I'm done playing by their rules. He took Elias's phone gently, sent the files to his own cloud drive, and handed it back. Thank you, Malik said. Seriously. I know what this costs you. Elias didn't smile. He just gave a small nod. Be careful. They're not afraid to ruin kids like us. That night, Malik sat in his room, staring at the files, the rankings, the donations, the fake praise, all of it, laid bare under his laptop's glow. His mom knocked softly on the door, poking her head in with a worried look, but he told her everything was fine. He needed to protect her from this, at least for now. At 1:13 a.m., Malik clicked print on the packet of evidence. 24 pages spilled from the printer one by one. He planned to hand them to the school board anonymously, maybe even leak them to the local press. He didn't want to wait for justice. He wanted to create it. But before he could pack the folder into his bag, his phone buzzed. A notification from the school's social media group chat. Students were tagging him in something. He opened the link and stopped breathing. It was a video posted to an anonymous account, but everyone knew who ran it. The caption read, "So this is the genius? LMA." The video showed Malik sitting alone in the library from 2 days ago. He was mumbling to himself, writing furiously in a notebook. The audio had been edited, spliced with whispered clips to make him sound unstable, even paranoid. Then a fake subtitle appeared. "They're all out to get me. I'll make them pay." It was a lie. A manipulated piece of footage, twisted to look like a confession or a breakdown. Within minutes, it was spreading like wildfire. Preston had struck first. Malik stared at his screen as the comment section exploded with mocking laughter and thinly veiled racism. And then his phone buzzed again with a message from an unknown number. "If you say a word, we'll release the rest." By the time the school bell rang the next morning, Malik felt like a different person. His body moved on autopilot. Shower, clothes, bus, yet his mind wasn't on Earth. It was floating somewhere between rage and disbelief, trapped inside a storm that had no sky. He hadn't slept. The video was everywhere. Preston's edit had spread like wildfire overnight, catching traction on every group chat, Discord server, and local school meme page. The comments were brutal. "Yo, this kid needs therapy. Bro lost his mind in the library. Acting like a genius but talks like he's in a horror movie." And then the one that made his stomach churn. "Typical. Always playing the victim." Malik sat at the back of the bus, hood over his head, headphones in but no music playing. Every bump in the road felt like it might shake him apart. He was used to pressure, but this was poison in the water supply. They weren't just mocking him, they were trying to erase him. When he walked through the school doors, the whispers hit him like invisible darts. Heads turned, some sneered, some avoided him completely. A few laughed out loud like they didn't even care who heard them. His stomach twisted as he made it to his locker. Someone had taped a piece of notebook paper to the metal door. Scrawled in thick red marker were the words, "Cheater, fraud, genius my A." He ripped it down, with shaking fingers, heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear his own thoughts. The hallway buzzed with energy, but none of it good. A current of cruelty pulsed through the air, and he was the lightning rod. Just as he was about to open his locker, he heard a familiar voice behind him. Cold, formal. "Malik Washington, please come with us." He turned slowly to find Mrs. Hartford, flanked by two administrators. The same woman from the academic review board, and Mr. Calloway. Their faces were masks, expressionless, polished, corporate. "We've received multiple complaints," the woman said. "We need to speak with you immediately." Students started pulling out phones again, recording, smiling. "About what now?" Malik asked, trying to keep his voice even. Mrs. Hartford stepped forward. "A second incident. A video has surfaced suggesting erratic behavior. We also have an anonymous submission claiming you've been using unauthorized test prep materials, not approved by Cresswell standards." "That's a lie," Malik snapped. "We'll let the evidence speak for itself," the woman replied. They didn't even ask him to follow. They just began walking, assuming he'd trail them like a criminal already resigned to his fate. And he did. But his eyes scanned the hallway one last time, searching for something, anything that looked like fairness. There was nothing. Inside the small administrative conference room, they took his phone again. This time they also demanded the passcode. "I'm not giving you that," Malik said. "If you refuse to cooperate," Mr. Calloway said with a sigh, "we'll have no choice but to escalate the disciplinary process to the school board. That could result in permanent record notations, or removal from your scholarship program." Malik clenched his fists. He was tired. Not physically, but soul tired. Tired of proving, defending, surviving. He stared at them. Their expensive watches, their beige dress shirts, their sterile language. "None of this is about school policy," he said finally. "This is about me not staying in my place." Mrs. Hartford tilted her head slightly, pretending confusion. "Excuse me? You all had no problem with me when I was invisible," Malik continued. "But the second I outscored your golden boy, solved a problem he couldn't, and made you all look wrong, suddenly I'm dangerous. Now I'm cheating. Now I'm erratic." The woman from the board sighed. "Malik, you're not here to find truth," he said, voice sharpening. "You're here to build a case. And guess what? I've already started building mine." There was a flicker of surprise in Hartford's eyes. A pause. He leaned forward. "I have files, records, donor documents, emails about Preston's placement, your vote to block me from entering AP Math. It's all saved." A heavy silence followed. Then Mrs. Hartford spoke too quickly. "You accessed private records. That's a violation of our tech policy." "No," he said. "Someone else did, and they gave them to me, because they're tired of watching kids like me get crushed." The room froze. For the first time, Malik felt power shift. Just slightly. But enough. The woman stood. You'll be contacted with a formal statement request. You're dismissed for today. He didn't thank them. He walked out. Outside, Elias was waiting near the gym again. Pale, nervous. They're trying to push for expulsion, he said quietly. They're contacting the board tonight. I overheard Preston talking to 2 other seniors. He said you're done by Friday. Malik exhaled through his nose. Then we need to go faster. He opened his laptop that night, posted the full truth on a burner blog page, linked only to his cloud drive. He uploaded every file, emails, ranking charts, the donation to placement timeline, and titled the post, "When Money Buys Math, a Cresswell cover-up." He didn't share it yet, not publicly, not until he was ready. But he wasn't the only one acting fast. The next morning, another video surfaced, this one worse. It showed Malik in the back of a classroom, eyes red, staring down at a test sheet. It was edited again, this time with a voiceover that wasn't his. A deep voice mimicking his tone saying, "This test is rigged. I'll do whatever it takes." It wasn't just slander. It was defamation. Fabricated audio. Deep fake. And it worked. By noon, the principal's office issued a public bulletin. Malik Washington is under formal investigation for multiple academic infractions. While we honor the integrity of due process, all privileges related to his academic track are suspended pending review. This includes honors classes, scholarship endorsements, and any representation of Cresswell Academy in external competition. It hit like a sledgehammer. Even the students who had once clapped for him now avoided eye contact. Teachers who once praised him gave cold nods or nothing at all. Malik walked through the halls like a ghost wearing the wrong uniform. But Elias met him near the vending machines that afternoon, face flushed. "Preston's behind the deepfake," he said. "I saw the software on his laptop. He bragged about it to Marcus. I'll get the proof. Just don't give up." Malik nodded once. His voice was steady. "I won't." That night he posted the blog, all of it, no names, but enough detail that anyone from Cresswell would know exactly who it was about. He added one line at the bottom. "You can try to ruin my name, but I'm done being quiet. Let's see how much of this you can erase." And then he hit publish. The post spread slowly at first. Then it exploded. Students shared it. Alumni reposted it. An anonymous Twitter account called Cresswell Leaks started tagging local journalists. And just when Malik thought he had regained a sliver of ground, his phone buzzed again. A new video. Anonymous number. No caption. He clicked it and froze. It was footage of him sitting in the counselor's office crying. He didn't even remember the camera being on. The audio was untouched this time. "I just don't know what they want from me. I keep doing everything right, but it's never enough." The message that followed read, "If you don't take the post down, we'll release this next. Let's see how strong you are once they see you break." By the next morning, Malik's face wasn't just known at Cresswell, it was everywhere. The video had been clipped down to 30 seconds. Just enough to show him at the board solving Preston's rigged problem. Chalk in hand, eyes focused, but instead of awe, it was met with mockery. A bold white caption stretched across the top. "This black kid thinks he's a genius," followed by a slow zoom into Malik's face as he worked out the answer. The background was edited with circus music. His movements were slowed, and someone had overlaid a voice clearly not his, mimicking him in a cartoonish tone, saying, "Watch out, Einstein. I got this." It wasn't just a roast. It was racial humiliation disguised as humor. Preston had posted it from a burner account, one that only his inner circle knew about, but it didn't take long for students to recognize the source. Screenshots were shared like wildfire. Twitter threads exploded. TikTok duets mocked Malik's posture, his concentration, even the seriousness on his face. Someone tagged the video with "fake smart," and it caught on like wildfire. By lunch, Malik from Cresswell was trending, not because of his skills, but because of the stereotype. One TikTok, from a popular Cresswell student named Amanda, racked up over 300,000 views in a few hours. In it, she watched the board-solving video and laughed into the camera. Her caption read, "When you think AP Math is your civil rights march." The comments were brutal. Affirmative action in action. "Let him cook until the grades come out." Classic diversity hire moment. "I bet his dad still thinks he's getting recruited." Malik sat alone in the cafeteria, headphones in, but the sound didn't matter. People pointed at him, laughed. Some just stared like he was a walking meme. A few took pictures of him mid-bite, trying to catch an ugly angle. He couldn't breathe. The walls of the school were closing in. He opened Instagram and saw the damage. His face, distorted with digital filters, his expressions mocked in reels. One student even recreated the math problem, with completely wrong steps, laughing through the whole thing. Look, I solved it Malik style backwards. But that wasn't the worst part. Preston's crew had gone further. They had started a private group called Cresswell Real Talk, a Snapchat thread where anonymous students could post without consequence. Screenshots leaked from the group later that night. Let's not lie, dude's smart. But he's aggressive smart. That kind of smart where he's angry all the time. You can tell he's got a chip on his shoulder. Typical. He probably grew up thinking, if he wins a math trophy, racism disappears. Malik sat on his bed that night, scrolling in the dark. His room felt like it had shrunk. The walls were too close, the air too thick. His mother knocked once, twice. But he didn't answer. He couldn't. He was afraid if he opened the door, she'd see it on his face. That broken mix of humiliation, rage, and hopelessness. His phone buzzed. Again, this time it was an email. Subject, mathematical genius. Watch this kid work. It was from a small independent education podcast. He stared at it, confused. Then another buzz. This time, a message request on LinkedIn. The name on the screen made him sit up straight. Dr. Langston Reed, Professor of Theoretical Mathematics, Harvard University. The message was short. I saw the video. You used a non-standard simplification approach for the triple-nested function. That's rare. Would you be open to a short conversation? Malik blinked. He reread the message. Again, this wasn't a prank. Dr. Langston Reed, the man whose lecture series Malik had watched on YouTube at 1 a.m. The same professor who wrote the paper about function layer theory that Malik had cited in his own math notes last year. And he had seen the video, not the edited clown version, but the raw logic. Malik's hands trembled as he typed back. Yes, anytime. He didn't expect a fast reply, but within 5 minutes, his phone buzzed again. Dr. Reed had sent his direct number. Said he was free now. Malik's heart thumped like a bass drum. He grabbed his hoodie, stepped outside the apartment into the cold air and called. The line clicked once. Then the voice. Deep. Calm. Experienced. Malik Washington. Yes, sir. I don't want to take much of your time, Dr. Reed said, but I wanted to tell you something directly. That problem you solved, the one being shared around, it wasn't just good work. It was uncommon work. The substitution method you used for the inner function, that's not typically taught at high school level. Malik swallowed hard. I didn't know it was different. That's how it made sense to me. That's what makes it brilliant, Dr. Reed replied. You trusted the math, not the tradition. That's the kind of thinking we need more of. Malik felt the tightness in his chest loosen slightly. Thank you, he whispered. Dr. Reed continued. Now I know you're going through something difficult. I've been where you are. Different time, same kind of fire. But let me be clear, you don't back down. Not now. Malik was quiet. Then he asked, why me? Why reach out? Because, the professor said, they made you a meme. I see a mathematician. They spoke for another 20 minutes. Dr. Reed asked about Malik's interests, his methods, even offered to send over a few open problems the university was looking into for competition prep. But before hanging up, he left Malik with something else. I can't fight your battles for you, he said. But if this thing grows, and it will, I can help make sure you don't get buried in the process. When Malik ended the call, the cold didn't bite anymore. His breath puffed into the air like steam, and for the first time in days, it didn't feel like he was suffocating. But as he walked back toward his building, his phone buzzed again. Another anonymous number. This one had no message, just a single video file. He hesitated, then tapped play. It was surveillance footage. A grainy view from one of the school's hallway cameras. The angle was high, looking down at a conversation. Two people. One was Preston. The other was Mrs. Hartford. The video had no sound. But Malik could clearly see Preston hand her something. An envelope. Cash? No. Documents. She flipped through them, then nodded. They shook hands. The timestamp in the corner read, 2 days before Malik was accused of cheating. Malik's hands shook as he rewatched the footage, realizing someone inside the system was leaking secrets from the shadows. But their identity was still hidden. The video of Preston and Miss Hartford exchanging documents stayed burned in Malik's mind long after he re-entered his apartment that night. He moved through the space like a ghost, past his mother washing dishes, past the warm light of the living room, straight into his room. He shut the door slowly, leaning against it, breathing hard, as if the truth he carried was too heavy for the small room to hold. He replayed the footage over and over. The timestamp glowed like a wound. 2 days before his cheating accusation. 2 days before the school turned him into a villain. Hartford and Preston weren't just aligned, they were coordinating, planning, grooming a narrative that would discredit him completely. He had proof. But proof meant nothing, unless someone with power believed it. That was the part that scared him. His laptop pinged. A new email notification displayed across the cracked corner of his screen. The sender's name made him sit up straight. Dr. Langston Reed, Harvard University. He clicked immediately. Malik, I would like to continue our conversation from earlier. Your method on the posted video is highly unusual and displays a conceptual intuition not typical of high school students. Please share a contact number where I may reach your household. This is time sensitive. Time sensitive. It had an academic urgency, not a threatening one, yet Malik's heart pounded anyway. He typed back the house number before he had time to second guess it, and within minutes, literally minutes, the phone in the hallway rang. His mother's voice echoed through the narrow corridor. Malik, it's for you. He walked out of his room slowly, palms damp, wiping them on his jeans before taking the phone. She looked confused, maybe a little impressed, but stepped away to give him privacy. He lifted the receiver. This is Malik. The voice on the other end had the kind of quiet authority that commanded attention without ever raising its volume. Malik, this is Dr. Langston Reed. Thank you for answering so quickly. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. No, sir, Malik said, forcing his breath to steady. Thank you for calling. I want to start by telling you something plainly, Dr. Reed said. I have reviewed the original version of that video before the edits. Your technique with the triple-nested function is not something commonly taught. In fact, the simplification step you executed mirrors a partial solution to a problem currently considered unsolved by several working groups. A variant of it exists in higher-level research. Malik blinked. The words didn't land all at once. Unsolved? It made sense in my head. That's exactly what caught my attention, Reed replied. Most mathematicians, even at the graduate level, rely on learned structures, established pathways. But what you did, it wasn't a learned behavior. It was instinctual, creative. Someone either taught you a rare technique, unlikely, or you possess a cognitive flexibility that only appears in a small percentage of mathematicians. Malik wasn't used to praise in this tone. Not flattery, not condescension, but genuine astonishment. It unsettled him in a way insults never did. He didn't know how to hold it. No one taught me, Malik said quietly. I work through things at night when I can't sleep. I try different patterns because sometimes the usual ones feel too slow. There was a long pause on the other end. You work alone? Yes, sir. Do you realize what that means? Dr. Reed asked, voice lowering. Do you understand how rare that is?
Malik didn't answer.
Reed continued. You performed a transformation that aligns with exploratory work being done at institutions like MIT, Princeton, and yes, Harvard. And most professionals spend years training before they approach something like it. Malik swallowed hard. I didn't know. I just wanted to solve the problem. And that, Reed said, is the difference between a student who is merely smart and one who is a mathematician at their core. Malik felt something lift in his chest. Just slightly. A breath he'd been holding for years without knowing it. But the relief didn't last. Not fully. Not with everything happening at school. Sir. Malik hesitated, fingers tightening around the phone cord. None of that matters here. They think I cheated. They said I'm under investigation. Everyone has turned on me. There's a video making me look. I know, Reed said softly. That is why I'm calling your home, not your school. I wanted your mother to hear my voice if she picked up. I wanted her to know something real educators rarely get to say out loud. Your son is extraordinary. Malik's throat tightened. Thank you, he whispered, but I'm not contacting you to praise you. I'm contacting you because you're in danger of being erased. Malik's breath caught. I think you already know that, Reed continued. Your school is attempting to discredit you. And once an institution begins shaping a narrative, it becomes almost impossible for a student, especially a black student, to rewrite it alone. Malik closed his eyes. Yes, he said quietly. I know. There was another long silence. Then Reed spoke again. I would like to meet with you. Not over the phone. In person. I want to evaluate your skills properly, give you access to material most students never see, and help connect you with programs that could protect your intellectual future. Malik's heart pounded. Programs? Yes, Reed said. Quietly funded ones. Ones that bypass the politics of high schools and the influence of wealthy families. Ones that have saved many brilliant young minds from being thrown away before their prime. Malik felt a strange flicker of hope. Small, trembling, but alive. But there is something you must understand, Reed added. His tone shifted. Heavier now. This path will not shield you from what's coming. In fact, it may intensify the pushback you receive. Malik frowned. Pushback? Yes. Once you step into circles where your talent is undeniable, certain people will fear you even more. They will question how you got there. They will diminish your skill. They will claim you were chosen because of optics, not brilliance. You've already seen the beginnings of that.
Malik let out a shaky breath. So, what do I do?
You decide what future you want, Reed replied. If you choose my path, it will give you opportunity, resources, and protection. But it comes at a cost. What cost? Malik asked, voice barely above a whisper. Reed paused, as if choosing his words carefully. You will have to leave certain things behind. The version of your life you've clung to. The idea that you can fix the system from the inside. If you walk forward, Malik, you must accept that not everyone can follow you. And not everyone wants you to rise. Malik glanced toward his closed bedroom door. His mother was just on the other side. His life, small, familiar, worn but warm, was all behind that door. The world Reed described felt like another planet, one he wasn't sure he deserved to step onto. Why me? Malik asked softly. Out of everyone, why me? Because Reed said, you see math the way artists see color, not as rules, but as possibility. And that kind of mind doesn't appear often. When it does, the world usually tries to crush it before anyone notices. Malik felt the truth of that in his bones. I'm offering you a door, Reed said quietly. But you must open it yourself. Malik exhaled slowly. If I say yes, when does this start? Immediately, Reed answered. I'll arrange a preliminary session this weekend. A discreet one. But Malik,
Yes?
you must keep this hidden. People around you, at your school, they will try to sabotage this once they realize someone powerful is in your corner. Malik nodded instinctively, even though Reed couldn't see him.
I understand, but before he could say anything else,
Malik heard a soft click on the other end. A pause. A second line activating. Someone else had joined the call. Not invited. Malik froze. Then a chilling voice mocking, amused, filtered through the line. Well, Harvard, huh? Preston. Malik's blood ran cold as Preston laughed softly through the receiver, proving that someone had tapped the line, and now Preston knew everything. The next morning, Malik stared at the phone like it had betrayed him. He hadn't slept. After Preston's voice cut through the line mocking, amused, there had been no more words. Just a sharp click, then silence. The line had gone dead, leaving Malik with nothing but the cold realization. Preston had heard everything. Reed's offer, the confidential opportunity, the door Malik had barely begun to crack open, was now exposed, and Preston would weaponize it. He always did. Dr. Reed called back within the hour. Your line's compromised, he said bluntly. Don't use that number again. I'm rerouting all future contact through encrypted channels. We'll be careful from now on. Malik had nodded even though the weight in his chest felt heavier than ever. Even progress had traps built into it. But despite the breach, Reed didn't pull away. He doubled down. 3 days later, a thick envelope arrived at Malik's apartment. Inside, 3 dense math packets, 2 login credentials for digital whiteboard simulators, and a handwritten note from Reed. They'll try to break you before you get there. Let's make sure you arrive stronger. Malik buried himself in the problems. Every night, every weekend, while the rest of Cresswell celebrated homecoming, rehearsed for the fall play, or gossiped about college visits, Malik was at his desk, eyes bloodshot, solving equations that most graduate students would struggle to touch. Reed introduced him to topics like nonlinear systems, combinatorics, and abstract logic theorems that bent Malik's brain in all the best ways. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was just learning math. He was creating it. But Reed wasn't just teaching equations. He was preparing Malik for a national-level mathematics invitational, an underground gateway to Ivy League research labs, and elite scholarships. Reed hadn't pushed Malik's name officially yet. He was waiting, watching how Malik handled the storm still brewing at Cresswell, because the school hadn't forgotten him, and it hadn't forgiven him. The investigation into Malik's cheating still hung over him like a shadow. Officially, it was paused for review, but in practice, it meant Malik was blacklisted. He was barred from all honors group meetings. His name had been removed from the competitive math team website. The guidance office accidentally dropped his name from the college scholarship prep list. None of it was coincidence. Malik kept his head down, but his silence didn't mean surrender. He had already leaked more documents to Cresswell Leaks, an anonymous whistleblower page now gaining traction on local news blogs. Everything from donor favoritism to test score manipulations. He watched from the shadows as the comments poured in. Some called it lies. Some said it was long overdue. But one thing was clear. People were paying attention. That attention made the school nervous. It made Preston's father furious. It started small. A legal-sounding letter sent to Malik's home. Vague but threatening. Citing libel concerns. An unauthorized distribution of school documents. Then came the call to the school board, demanding Malik's removal from all extracurriculars. Then the demand that all unverified allegations be addressed through a third-party firm, one funded by none other than Charles Worthington IV himself. And finally, one morning in October, Malik was pulled from class without warning. He walked into the conference room and found Preston already seated, legs crossed, a smirk just under the surface. Across from him sat a man in a slick navy suit, with silver cufflinks, older, sharper, with eyes that scanned like lasers. Charles Worthington. He stood when Malik entered. "So," he said, voice smooth and dangerous, "you're the boy causing all this noise." Malik didn't flinch. He met the man's stare without blinking. "And the boy solving problems your son couldn't," he said. Charles smiled thinly. "Cute." Mrs. Hartford sat to the side, silent for once. Her face gave away nothing. Charles gestured to the chair. "Sit. I want to be clear with you, Mr. Washington." Malik didn't move. "I've built this school," Charles continued. "My name is on its walls, its labs, its auditorium, and for the past 6 weeks, you've tried to drag it through the mud with rumors and doctored files. All because you couldn't handle a little academic consequence. Consequences built on lies." Malik shot back. Charles leaned in. "No one cares, Malik. No one. You think the world's going to rise up for a clever little boy with a blog? Please. The moment this is over, they'll forget your name." Malik clenched his fists. "I don't need them to remember me, just to remember what I exposed." Charles smirked. "Exposed? You've exposed nothing. Just noise. Nothing verifiable. And I promise you, if you keep going, I will bury you in paperwork and policy until there's no university left willing to touch your name. Your future will dry up before it begins." There it was, the real threat. Not in fists. Not in slurs, but in erasure. He wanted Malik forgotten. "I don't scare easy," Malik said quietly. "You will," Charles said. "Especially once my lawyers file the defamation claim." Malik's breath caught. "Your son doctored videos," he snapped. "And yours," Charles said, tilting his head. "Your mother signed a waiver that granted full access to all footage and internal investigations. Didn't she tell you that? Clause 3.5. You gave us every tool we needed to build a case." Malik's stomach sank. Clause 3. The document his mother had signed during enrollment. Buried in legal language. The thing she hadn't fully understood. They'd used it to monitor, to edit, to twist everything. He stood slowly. "Do what you need to," he said. "But I'll win. Maybe not here. Maybe not now. But I will. Because I don't lie. And I don't pay people to protect me." Charles's eyes narrowed. But Malik didn't stay to watch his reaction. He walked out slowly, deliberately, knowing full well what he'd just done. He had declared war, and now the Worthington Empire would strike back. That night, Malik received an email from the National Invitational Council. His invitation to compete had been delayed due to new eligibility concerns under review. The email came in the dead of night, its subject line clinical, its content razor sharp. Malik stared at the glowing screen in the dark, the words cutting deeper with each reread. "Your national invitational application has been flagged due to unresolved eligibility issues raised by your current institution. Until formally cleared, your invitation to compete is on hold." He didn't move. He didn't blink. He just sat there, the words echoing in his skull. Flagged. On hold. Another door slammed shut. Quietly. Politically, behind layers of vague language and institutional red tape. The next morning he woke to another storm. Cresswell's hallways buzzed with rumors. Preston's crew walked around with smirks so smug they didn't even try to hide it anymore. Someone had spray-painted the word liar on Malik's locker in red. The janitor was already scrubbing it when he arrived. Eyes down, not saying a word. Elias met him near the math wing. His face pale, jaw tense. "There's gonna be a board meeting this afternoon," he whispered. "Closed session. They're voting on your eligibility to represent Cresswell in any official competitions." Malik didn't look surprised. "Let me guess. They won't let me in the room." Elias shook his head. They say it's a confidential deliberation. But Preston's dad is gonna be there. And he's offering them a new endowment. $5 million this time. For the science wing. Malik clenched his jaw. Buying justice in bulk now. Elias looked around, his voice dropping. It's worse. They're saying you violated ethics by leaking internal records. They're calling you a threat to institutional integrity. So I go from honor roll to institutional threat in a semester? Elias didn't respond. He didn't have to. The board meeting took place in the private conference room behind the principal's office. Mahogany walls, soundproofed, lined with leather chairs and bottled silence. Malik wasn't invited, but word leaked fast. Several teachers were seen going in and out. The school counselor didn't show her face all day. By 2 p.m., the whispers became louder, more specific. A student assistant who had snuck a photo outside the boardroom shared it in a group chat. Charles Worthington, seated comfortably in the center, surrounded by members of the school board, and 2 attorneys in gray suits. The caption read, "Big money moves. Say goodbye to Malik." And then the phrase started spreading like wildfire. Goodbye, Malik. It was cruel, but it was strategic. The message wasn't just that Malik was being erased. It was that the erasure was public, celebratory, even justified. Inside the boardroom, Charles Worthington spoke with the calm menace of someone who knew the system bent for him. With all due respect, he said to the table, we cannot allow a student currently under investigation for academic misconduct to represent Cresswell at a national level. It's a question of optics, integrity. A younger board member hesitated. But he hasn't been formally found guilty. We're still in review. Charles raised a hand, which is why I'm proposing a solution. We table his eligibility until the next review cycle. No permanent punishment, just prudence. In the meantime, I'm happy to pledge $5 million toward our expanding science program. The room fell into a deep, uncomfortable quiet. No one said yes, but no one said no either. It was enough. Outside, Malik sat in the library, pretending to study, his hands shaking beneath the table. He'd felt humiliation before. He'd felt rage. But this was different. This was surgical, a dismantling of everything he had built. Not because he broke the rules, but because he dared to break expectations. But then, the unexpected happened. At 2:47 p.m., a video link landed in his inbox. No sender, no subject. Just a single file. Hartford training leak. He clicked it. The footage was grainy, clearly from a phone camera, tilted slightly from the edge of a chair. It showed Mrs. Hartford at a professional development seminar 3 years ago. She stood in front of a whiteboard, speaking to a room of teachers. At first it seemed normal, a lecture on grading consistency, until her tone shifted. They come in thinking they're special, she said. Arms crossed, voice laced with disdain. These equity kids. They're told their whole lives they're brilliant, because they solved a few problems at public schools that set the bar on the floor. A few people in the room laughed nervously. They challenge everything, every deduction, every test score, every process. It's exhausting. Someone off camera asked something. Mrs. Hartford replied, no, I don't hate the idea of them being here. I hate the idea of them thinking they belong more than our legacy students. There's a difference between giving opportunity and handing over ownership. Another laugh. Louder this time. Malik froze. The timestamp in the corner was unmistakable. This was before he ever set foot in Cresswell, before she even knew his name. She had already made her mind up about students like him. The video ended. He sat in silence for a full minute before grabbing his phone and texting Elias. Call me, now. When Elias answered, Malik didn't hesitate. I just got a video. Hartford. At a training. She talks about equity students like we're invaders. Like we don't belong here. Elias's breath caught. You're sure? I'll send it. We need this to leak now. Elias didn't ask where it came from. He didn't need to. By 3:10 p.m. the clip was posted anonymously through the same whistleblower network. By 3:35 p.m. it had over 20,000. By 4:15 p.m. it had made local news. And by 5:00 p.m. a protest had formed outside Cresswell's main building. Students, parents, and alumni standing together with signs that read, we belong here. Diversity is not a threat. Integrity donations. The board was forced to reconvene. And this time, they had to do it with the public watching. Just before the board re-entered session, another anonymous file dropped. This one titled Preston Admissions Override. That inside it was undeniable proof of the scheme that started it all. It took less than an hour for the internet to do what the school had tried to prevent for years. Tell the truth. The leaked footage of Mrs. Hartford from the old staff training session ripped through the Cresswell community like a wildfire in dry brush. Within minutes, students were screen recording it, reposting it on every platform: Twitter, TikTok, Reddit. By the time the school board reconvened to discuss Malik's eligibility, Hartford leak was trending locally, then nationally. The video was undeniable. No amount of spin could untangle what people had heard with their own ears. It wasn't about context. It wasn't about interpretation. It was racism. Raw, bitter, and captured on camera. The clip was only 3 minutes long, but it undid years of silence. Some of these students think they're heroes just for showing up, Hartford had said in the footage, her arms folded, her voice casual like she was talking about a misplaced stapler. They're handed opportunity and act like it's theirs to control, especially the black boys. They come in loud, emotional, always trying to prove they're smarter than they are. Exhausting. A silence had followed in the video. No one in the room had challenged her. The silence was worse than the words. Now that silence was gone. Cresswell's official account posted a sterile statement by 6:12 p.m. We are deeply disturbed by a recently surfaced video featuring remarks made during an internal training. These comments do not reflect Cresswell's values. We are launching an independent review. It wasn't enough. Because the community wasn't asking for a review. They were demanding accountability. Students organized a sit-in the next morning, blocking the front office with signs taped to the glass. Racist staff vs. safe students. We want learning, not surveillance. Justice for Malik. Parents showed up next, holding press conferences on the school's steps. Then came the alumni letters. Dozens of them. Some from former students who admitted they had experienced the same treatment Malik had. Dismissed, discredited, quietly pushed out. And then, the activist came. Not celebrities. Not politicians. Mothers. Pastors. Educators from nearby schools. Grassroots organizers who saw in Malik a reflection of too many students silenced before him. They rallied outside Cresswell's gates, held up photos of other black students who'd transferred or been disciplined in ways that had never made sense until now. For the first time, Cresswell Academy looked like it was standing trial, not Malik. And Hartford? She vanished. No statement. No defense. The administration claimed she was on leave, but Malik knew better. She was hiding. Because this time her reputation wasn't just bruised. It was bleeding out. Inside the school, the air had changed. The same teachers who once avoided eye contact with Malik now nodded stiffly in the halls. The counselor who once smiled through lies now kept her door shut. And the students, those who'd reposted mocking memes and laughed behind screens, walked a little more carefully. But Malik didn't want their guilt. He wanted their honesty. And more than that, he wanted the truth to stay louder than their shame. By Thursday, the math department was in chaos. The head of academic integrity resigned for personal reasons. 2 other teachers from Hartford's training session were under review for complaints of racial microaggressions, filed by students who had, until now, stayed silent. Malik didn't celebrate. He didn't post. He just showed up to school, did his work, and trained at night, under Reed's mentorship. Because the goal hadn't changed. Exposure wasn't the finish line. Excellence still was. And then came the announcement. The regional math competition, one of the final rounds before the national invitational, was being hosted at Cresswell this year. Malik's name was reinstated to the roster. Officially, it should have felt like justice, but it felt like bait. He knew this wasn't over. Not while Preston still had his name, his father's money, and no consequences. The day of the competition arrived under a gray, stormy sky. Malik stood outside the school building that morning in his uniform. Pressed navy slacks, clean shoes, black hoodie zipped halfway to the collar. He stared at the entrance for a long time before stepping inside. Reporters were already there. Local news vans lined the street. Cameras hovered near the steps. Microphones pointed at students as they entered. A few called out to Malik, asking if he wanted to comment on the controversy. He didn't stop. He didn't speak. The hallways were packed. Visiting schools, volunteers, event staff. Then, at the end of the main corridor, he saw him, Preston, standing near the auditorium doors, in full uniform, badge on his chest, math team binder under his arm like nothing had happened. He was smiling. Malik stopped in his tracks. Preston walked up slowly, confidently, his tone mock genuine. Didn't think you'd show up, man. Thought you'd be too busy playing victim on the news. Malik didn't flinch. Didn't think you'd still have the nerve to walk around after all that's been exposed. Preston leaned in. Exposed? You think some dusty video from 3 years ago changes the fact that this school will never be yours? You got reinstated because of pity, not merit. They're terrified of looking racist now. Congratulations, you're a quota. Malik stared at him, calm but seething. Say what you need to. But when the problems go up on that board, it's me you'll be looking at. Preston's eyes narrowed. A teacher interrupted, calling competitors into the auditorium. Malik turned, walked away, never breaking stride. But just before he entered, his phone buzzed. An anonymous number. A single link. He clicked it. It was a new video file, titled simply, Preston Admissions Override. The thumbnail showed a conference room, security cam footage, Preston's father at a table, a printed file being passed across, Preston's name visible at the top. A voice in the background said, "Clearly, we understand he didn't meet the AP requirements, but the donation secures his placement. Just keep the documents off the record." Malik froze. This was it. This was everything. Malik looked up from his phone and saw the media lining up outside the auditorium. He now had the final weapon in his hands. But if he released it, the fallout could destroy Preston's family name forever. The auditorium lights dimmed just as Malik stepped onto the stage, a spotlight splitting the dark air straight down the center. From the rafters, cameras hummed and swiveled, their red record lights glowing like distant stars in a hostile sky. The audience sat in silence, hundreds of faces blank with expectation, phones raised, waiting for what would come next. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and dry nerves. Every breath tasted like the promise of something irreversible. Malik's hands trembled just slightly as he lifted his backpack off his shoulder and laid it beside the judge's desk. The bag seemed heavier than usual, weighed down with every late-night workbook, every spreadsheet, every scandal proof and hidden file he'd clung to like armor. From across the stage, Preston emerged. Tall, crisp uniform, face composed, eyes narrowing under the glare of cameras. His father stood just behind him, silent, expensive suit, arms folded, as impenetrable as steel. Two lawyers flanked him, their faces unreadable beneath the glare. The hush in the room felt like a countdown. Malik swallowed, throat dry. He told himself, this wasn't just for him, not anymore. It was for every displaced name, erased, every silent student. The MC's voice cut through the quiet, sharp and official. Welcome to the final round of the National Mathematical Invitational at Cresswell Academy. The words echoed off wood-paneled walls. 2 finalists. 1 champion. Contestants, please prepare at your desks. You have 30 minutes. Malik seated himself at the right desk closest to the aisle, and the glaring media lights. He saw Dr. Reed's face in the front row, half-shadowed but fierce, nodding once, subtly. A flicker of reassurance. Behind Reed, a smattering of supporters, students, parents, a few activist faces who had refused to disappear when the cameras arrived. They watched, not as cheerleaders, as witnesses. Preston walked to the left desk with the calm of someone who owns the stage. His smirk was quiet, controlled, a practiced expression. He glanced at Malik, eyes unreadable, lips almost imperceptibly curved upward. Then he turned away, snapping open his notebook, ready to scribble. The first questions came, basic. Competitors solved them quickly. Algebraic manipulations, geometric proofs, standard trigonometric identities. Malik answered each in his head before the pencil even touched paper, breathing methodically, trying to calm the chaos in his chest. He noticed Preston's answers were neat, confident but lacked something. They were correct, but safe, routine. What Malik had learned, what he had lived, had taught him to find beauty in the unexpected edge, the unorthodox path. 20 minutes passed. The stage lights felt heavier now, as though they were pressing him against the floor. Sweat tickled the back of his neck. In the audience, cameras clicked. Somewhere, a student murmured. The silence stretched taut like a wire about to snap. Then the judges signaled the final phase, the last question. A hush bigger than silence fell over the auditorium. Malik set his workbook aside, closed his eyes for just a second, and exhaled slowly. He let the room fizz out. Lights, cameras, whispering buzz, and centered on something deeper. Late nights with chalk dust. The times he'd practiced until the boards blurred. The whispered encouragement of his mother when he thought no one was watching. On the giant board above the stage, the final question appeared. The auditorium light shifted, illuminating the white surface like a blank grave. Malik's blood froze. He stepped forward, chalk in hand. It was the same problem, the one Preston had written on the board that first day in honors math. the three-layer nested integration that had been intended as a trap. The same problem Malik solved under pressure and humiliation, the one that had started everything. The accusation, the cheating rumors, the viral backlash. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras panned, phones raised. The stage felt smaller now, closed in. Preston's smirk faltered. His eyes flicked to his father. The lawyers shifted in their seats. A lawyer's fingers tapped rhythmically against the polished table. Malik's heart pounded so hard it felt like his ribs would crack. But he didn't step back. Instead, he breathed in. Chalk pressed to board. He remembered the steps now. The substitution, the inverse transform, the trigonometric identity that unraveled the deepest layers. The same technique nobody expected. The same technique hidden away all these nights because it might make him a target again. He whispered to himself under his breath, almost inaudible. This time, I'm ready. The audience was silent. Not a cough. Not a shift. Just the echo of their own anticipation. Malik started writing. He moved faster than he expected. Lines flowing. Integrals collapsing. Variables dissolving into elegant simplicity. His chalk glided across the board. Dust following like mist over water. He felt a calmness settle in him. A strange peace, sharpened by the storm. About halfway through, a soft but heavy crash echoed from backstage. Something metallic. A shelf collapsed. Gasps. Some of the audience turned. Lights flickered. For a moment. Chaos. The judges murmured. Cameras panned in confusion. Malik's hand froze. Heart jolted. The chalk snapped midline. The board blurred for a heartbeat. Then the lights steadied. Someone called from off stage. A technical crew rushed in. But the judges signaled. The timekeeper beat the buzzer. 10 seconds left. Malik wiped the chalk dust from his brow, steadied his hand, and underlined the final answer in bold chalk. The board stood still, under the bright light. He stepped back, chest heaving, blood pounding in his ears. Silence stretched again. The judges moved forward, scanning the work. The audience leaned. The current of breath across hundreds of people was heavier than the weight of the cameras. Preston stared, dumbfounded. His note-taking hand stopped mid-scribble. His father sat forward, face pale behind his glare. A judge tapped the board with a white-gloved finger, tracing one of the bold lines. He looked to the head judge, an older mathematician with steel eyes, then back at Malik. Time froze. Finally, the head judge cleared his throat. Solution is valid, he said. Slow, measured, and non-standard, but valid. Murmurs swept the auditorium like wind through dry grass. Cameras flashed, phones recorded. Supporters of Malik rose, trembling. Some stood, some shouted. A few wept. Preston's father stood too, face drained. His lawyers exchanged looks. Uneasy, Preston didn't move. But his shoulders slumped. His posture no longer regal. The head judge raised a hand. We require no more competition. The award goes to Malik Washington. The room exploded. Cheers, calls, camera shutters. Malik's mind went blank, until a surge of warmth washed over him. Not pride, not triumph, relief, something like justice. Dr. Reed stood near the aisle, eyes bright, fist raised just slightly, unspoken. Malik caught his mother's tearful face in the front row. She mouthed, "You did it." But as the applause swelled, a hush fell over one corner of the room. Preston rose slowly, the legal men beside him. His face was impassive, a mask crafted under pressure. His father's face looked older, hollow, but intact. A flicker passed through the lawyer's eyes. Threat, calculation, something colder than anger. Preston straightened, voice low but sharp. "Congratulations," he said to Malik. "You win this stage, but remember, the board's not done, and neither am I." The words hung in the air, but almost no one heard them over the cheers. Cameras panned back to Malik as he lifted the trophy. A sleek bronze plaque. Lights flashed. Phones glowed. Journalists called out his name. Malik's breath came heavy. He scanned the sea of faces and realized this wasn't just a victory, it was a reckoning. But before he could even come down from the high, the MC's voice cut through again, quieter now, but hard. "Attention contestants, supporters, media, please leave the auditorium promptly for post-competition interviews." Malik gathered his backpack, slung it over his shoulder, but froze when he saw the media crowding near the exit, flashbulbs popping, papers rustled. Reporters pushed forward. He heard a voice call. "Malik Washington. Comment on the recent leaks." Another, "Do you regret exposing Cresswell?" He didn't answer. He didn't move. Instead, he thought of every hidden file, every suppressed truth, every name erased. He thought of justice. He thought of change, but he also thought of what was waiting for him. Outside this hall, behind closed doors, in courtrooms, and smear campaigns, the fight wasn't over. He slid through the throng, eyes ahead, but he felt it, a new tension. Not the fear of failing, the fear of surviving. Because once you make them lose, they don't forget. They change the rules. They shift the stage. As Malik stepped into the blinding flashes of cameras, a deep, calm voice crackled over a hidden speaker from backstage. "This isn't over. We still have your file." The auditorium lights flickered once, then went dark. For a second, maybe less, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. Malik stood at the chalkboard, hand lowered, eyes locked on the final symbol he had drawn. A double-line conclusion mark under the equation. His solution didn't just end the problem, it transcended it. And for a moment, even he didn't realize what he had just done. The board gleamed under the lights, its surface layered in precise strokes of chalk in sudden inspiration. The equation, the same one Preston had weaponized against him months ago, now glowed with clarity. But it wasn't just correct. It was different. Malik hadn't used the typical multivariable substitution, or the standard Treg reduction path. He had applied an obscure compression method derived from tensor calculus, a college-level abstraction far beyond the competition's scope. Then he paired it with a symmetry collapse from advanced physics, a step no high school student would even attempt, and it worked. For the first time since the match began, the room fell into a silence not born from tension, but from awe. One of the judges leaned in, another stood, glasses slipping down the bridge of his nose as he examined the final line. A third whispered to his colleague, "That can't be. Is that a hybrid convergence loop?" Malik didn't turn around. He didn't need to. He felt it. The judges conferred quietly, stepping to the side. Their voices weren't audible, but their hands pointed, their eyes flicked to and from the board, and a collective realization washed over them, like a slow-moving tide. Malik finally stepped back from the board, wiping chalk dust from his palms onto his pants. His heart was beating, not fast, not panicked, steady, like it had found its rhythm. Across the stage, Preston stared at the solution. Not with confusion, with dread. He understood what had just happened. Malik hadn't just solved the problem. He had redefined the parameters of how the problem could be approached. He had turned a weapon into a blueprint for something greater. Something that rendered Preston's tricks and shortcuts obsolete. And suddenly, the silence broke, first with a single clap, then another. Then a surge of applause that rattled the auditorium, thunderous and rising, until students and parents alike were on their feet. Some weren't even sure what they were clapping for. They just knew they had witnessed something brilliant, something rare, a moment of genius. Malik turned to face the room. For the first time, he didn't see judgment in their eyes, or pity, or hostility. He saw respect, but not from everyone. Preston remained seated, fists clenched, lips drawn tight. His father, watching from the front row, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes scanning the judges as if searching for a loophole in a contract. And then the head judge stepped forward. His voice boomed through the mic. "The final problem has been solved, with an unorthodox but mathematically valid approach, a method so advanced, it introduces a level of elegance rarely seen in this competition." He turned to Malik, eyes piercing and proud. "Mr. Washington, congratulations. You are the winner of this year's National Math Invitational." The crowd exploded. Cameras flashed. Microphones surged forward. Reporters shouted Malik's name. He stood still. The applause crashed around him like ocean waves. But Malik wasn't moved by the noise. He was watching Preston. Preston didn't even pretend to smile. He stood slowly, his face pale. No handshake, no acknowledgement, just a hollow nod to the judges. And then he stepped off the stage without a word. His father followed, whispering to one of the lawyers. Malik knew this wasn't the end, but it was a shift. And then the trophies were presented. A thick engraved plaque with his name, a certificate, and a sealed envelope from the National Mathematics Federation, containing a formal offer for a mentorship under 2 professors and a scholarship consideration. Malik accepted it all, quietly. Outside, the media swarmed. Dozens of reporters pushed in, some shouting questions, others trying to angle their mics to catch a quote. "Malik, how does it feel to be vindicated? Did you know you were rewriting theory? What would you say to your younger self? Malik didn't answer. He raised the plaque briefly for a photo, then dropped his arm and walked straight past them, down the steps away from the noise. As he reached the edge of the crowd, a small boy, maybe 10, reached out to him with a math workbook in hand. His face wide-eyed, full of quiet awe. Malik stopped. He knelt down, took the workbook, and signed his name at the top, then handed it back with a nod. The boy beamed, and Malik walked on. By the time he got home, the sky was already beginning to dim. The street was quiet. No cameras, no crowds, just the low hum of crickets, and the distant rattle of a garbage truck. His mother met him at the door, wrapped him in a long, silent hug. She didn't say, "I'm proud." She didn't need to. He could feel it in her heartbeat, steady against his. Later that night, Malik sat on his bed, the trophy leaning against the nightstand. He stared at the folder of emails and interviews piling up on his laptop. Then at his phone still buzzing, still alive with congratulations, offers and press requests. And then he noticed something new. A thick white envelope slipped under his door. He picked it up. The front read, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Department of Mathematics. It wasn't electronic. It wasn't an email or a digital offer like the others. It was real. Heavy. Malik held it in his hand for a long moment, but he didn't open it. Not yet. He placed it on the desk. Not because he didn't care, but because something deeper told him that opening it would mean stepping into another war, another world, and he wasn't ready to leave this one behind. Not yet. Because as much as the world had shifted that night, Malik knew something most of them didn't. This wasn't just about math. It never had been. Malik sat by the window, envelope untouched, as the streetlight flickered across the road. A dark SUV idled for too long before pulling away slowly, its windows tinted and unreadable. The first light of dawn touched the city when Malik's phone began to ring, not once but dozens of times. He sat on the edge of his bed, uniform still on, trophy from the competition lying beside him, and his laptop open to a blank page. The glow of streetlights blurred through the window, casting long shadows across the floor. Each ping felt like a pulse, a heartbeat dragging him into something far larger than a math board, far heavier than any chalk-drawn equation. Calls from news crews, emails from scholarship committees, messages from universities offering instant admissions interviews, full rides, and mentorship. Some framed it as redemption, others as responsibility. Every message demanded a response, a statement, a soundbite, a photo, a quote. "We need your voice," one reporter texted. "We need your story." Malik didn't answer. He didn't type. He sat silent. He remembered the chalk dust under his nails, the smug faces, the locker searches, the memes, the viral hate, the whisper campaigns. He remembered every moment they tried to reduce him to a stereotype, a scandal, a statistic, and now they wanted him to be their symbol, a poster child, a hero. But heroes are loud. They speak. They perform. Malik had learned long ago. His power lay in silence, in letting their own shadows reveal the truth. By morning, the press had descended on his mother's house. Reporters lined the sidewalk. Floodlights pressed through living room windows. Neighbors stared from behind curtains. His mother welcomed them with a quiet dignity, one that had held the walls of their lives together before Cresswell. Through late-night tutoring, community college prep books, and empty promises. But even she wouldn't speak. She whispered something to Malik. He nodded, closing the door. The world outside spun with headlines. Student vindicated. Math prodigy exposes systemic bias at top private school. From viral meme to national symbol, Malik Washington's turnaround. Scholarship surge after Cresswell scandal. Universities compete for former honors kids. Offers piled in. Outreach from Ivy League schools. Merit-based grants. Donations for underprivileged youth. Even internship offers from think tanks. A mathematics nonprofit in New York sent a brief letter. "Your method challenges convention. We want to support you." Still. Silence. He read them all. Saved them into a folder marked possibilities. He didn't respond. Not yet, because in the silence, doubts had space to breathe. Questions formed. Could he trust them? Were they rallying around him for justice, or for optics? Was this another stage, another spotlight, another performance that risked erasure the moment he refused to play by their rules? School was different now. Teachers avoided him, not out of shame, but fear. Students watched. Emails buzzed with threats and support in equal measure. Some sent hate, others sent apologies, some fake, some sincere. The halls felt unstable, like a building shifting under its foundation. Only a handful stood firm. Old friends, a few teachers who quietly nodded in the halls, an activist who believed in him before the cameras arrived. Among them was a local civil rights lawyer named Jacobs, who guided Malik through legal threats, file requests, and the looming specters of defamation lawsuits. He told Malik bluntly, "You did the right thing, but this won't stop until it hurts more than it motivates." Through it all, Malik stayed quiet, until the day of the school board hearing. The hearing room smelled of polished wood, fabric-lined chairs, and stale tension. Outside, protesters gathered, parents, students, alumni, community organizers, some holding handmade signs, others recording with phones, standing shoulder to shoulder. Their murmurs rippled like waves against the walls. Among them, a few carried signs with older names, students who had disappeared after vague transfers, names that had once been erased but now had a chance to return to memory. Inside, Malik sat at the center table. His dossier lay open before him, the admissions override video file, the leaked records, the protest footage, the social media archives, the racial harassment training clip of Mrs. Hartford. He glanced around, a sea of faces, parents in suits, school board members, legal representatives, community advocates. Cameras dotted the periphery. The air felt thick, charged, dense enough to taste. When his name was called, Malik stood. He didn't carry a speech. He carried presence, a quiet gravity. He walked to the podium, chin lifted, hands steady. He began. "I was taught that math was truth, that numbers didn't lie, but I found out the world does." Murmurs buzzed through the room, but he continued. "For months they tried to erase me, collated my notes, scrutinized my locker, leaked lies about cheating. They turned my face into a viral joke, my name into a meme." His voice remained calm, controlled, but his eyes burned with what they felt.
"This isn't about me, not really. It's about every student who's ever been told they don't belong. Every name wiped from records. Every promise stripped away because of a donation, or a line on paper, or a fear disguised as integrity."
He paused. Silence folded around him. "They said I was a problem, a pattern to fix, an exception to correct. But," he glanced at board members, "we are not problems, we are people." Heads fell. Some eyes flickered downward. Others hardened, fidgeted. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a stack of paper, old school folders, academic records, testimonies, teacher evaluations, emails, junior year science fair logs, of a black student named Jalen Thomas, all lined up chronologically. They erased his record last year, when he dared to ask a question. "I'm holding it now so you can't look away." He laid the papers on the table gently, not as evidence but as memory. A reminder. We don't need pity, we need justice. We don't want charity, we want equality. And then he closed his folder, stepped back, and turned. The room was quiet, tense, waiting. Outside, cameras flashed. The crowd exhaled as one. A low roar began rising. First quiet mutters, then cheers, then applause that broke like a wave against the glass walls. Parents wept. Students held signs high. Alumni hammered their fists on the windows. The microphones captured it all. The world listened. The board reconvened. They didn't speak to Malik. Their faces were pale, masked. Their gavel hands hovered above paperwork they no longer dared to shuffle. Minutes later, their verdict echoed. Not a sentence, but a promise. An immediate independent investigation. A suspension of all punitive actions against Malik. A public apology draft to be reviewed by community representatives. A scholarship fund, set up for underrepresented students. And, most importantly, the reinstatement of all former students removed under dubious circumstances, with their records reviewed. The room erupted again. This time in relief, disbelief, vindication. Malik stood still. He let the sound wash over him, felt it settle like dust around him. But he didn't move. He closed his eyes, inhaled, then exhaled quietly. Outside the building, thunderheads gathered overhead. Rain threatened to pour. But beneath those clouds, hundreds of lives shifted. Doors cracked open. Names scratched back into history. Futures were calculated. That night, his phone buzzed once more. A single notification, an official-looking envelope, from MIT. Malik stared at it. The light illumined his face, gave it weight, dignity. He reached toward it with slow fingers, paused. He didn't open it. Some doors don't need to swing open yet. Some escapes aren't the point. He turned away. He stepped outside into the gentle patter of rain, beginning to fall. The world felt quieter, slower, alive. As he walked past the gates of Cresswell one last time, he felt a presence behind him. He didn't look back, but he heard the soft footsteps, a familiar figure. Preston. Malik didn't stop. He moved forward, the rain washing over him, cold droplets on his face, but warm under his skin. Preston passed by. They were close enough that Malik could feel the silent tension, like two lines of electricity parallel, almost touching. Malik leaned in, lips near Preston's ear, and whispered something. The words carried weight, but only Malik and Preston heard them. The crowd faded. The rain dimmed. Time slowed. Preston froze, then turned, mascara of shock behind steady eyes. And as Malik walked away, he realized the final page hadn't been written. The rain drowned the sound of Malik's whisper. But Preston's expression promised the storm had only just begun. No one should have to fight this hard, just to be seen as equal. If Malik's story moved you, if it made you angry, or made you think, don't stay silent. Type yes if you believe in justice. Subscribe if this broke your heart.